In one of my own luxury car dealerships, I want to know how my employees are treating customers. Carl, a salesman on duty, didn't see a potential customer. He saw a black man he thought didn't belong. His dismissive attitude and outright refusal to assist me spoke volumes. Little did he know, he was making the biggest mistake of his career. I let him dig himself deeper, unaware that the very person he was disrespecting was the owner of the entire business. And by the time he realized it, it was far too late. Let me tell you what happened. This is a story you don't want to miss. I walked into one of my own dealership branches, keeping my identity under wraps. Only the general manager, a top employee named Daniel, knew who I was. The rest of the staff, including the salesman on duty, had no clue they were about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. The showroom gleamed with luxury cars, each one a masterpiece of engineering and craftsmanship. I had come in dressed casually, designer hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, but I knew from experience that people like Carl, the salesman watching me from behind the desk, saw only what they wanted to see. Carl stood up, adjusting his tie as he strolled over. His eyes flicked over me with barely hidden skepticism. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone already dismissive. I nodded, already anticipating his reaction. "Yeah, I'm interested in the new Phantom model, black exterior, red interior." Carl let out a short, condescending laugh. "The Phantom?" He exaggerated his pronunciation, as if I had just asked for a spaceship. "That model starts at over $500,000. Are you sure you're in the right place?" I remained calm. "Yeah, I'm sure." Carl sighed as if I had just inconvenienced him. "Look, maybe I can show you something more practical." He gestured toward the entry-level sedans near the front of the showroom. "Something more in your budget." I raised an eyebrow, but instead of snapping back, I decided to play along. "Oh, and what makes you think I can't afford the Phantom?" He smirked, folding his arms. "I'm just saying, that's a car for serious buyers, not for joyriders looking to sit in a luxury car for a few minutes." Wow, he wasn't even trying to hide it. "I see," I said, keeping my voice even. "And how do you determine who's a serious buyer?" "Experience," Carl said smugly. "I've been in this business a long time. I can spot who's serious and who's just looking." I could feel the anger bubbling up, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing it. Instead, I smiled. "All right, Carl, why don't you get your manager for me?" His smirk widened. "My manager is a busy man. He doesn't have time for people who aren't serious buyers." I chuckled to myself. Oh, this was going to be fun. What do you think happens next? Does Carl call his manager, or does he keep pushing his luck? Comment below. I glanced around the showroom, taking my time. I knew I could force the issue, but something about watching Carl dig himself deeper was too entertaining. "All right, Carl," I said, leaning against the counter. "How about this? Let me take a look at the Phantom anyway. No harm in that, right?" He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I have real customers to attend to." He gestured toward the glass entrance doors where a well-dressed older man was just stepping inside. "That gentleman, for example, probably isn't here to waste time." I smirked. "You sure about that?" Carl scoffed. "Trust me, I know how this business works." Just then, Daniel, the general manager, appeared from his office at the back of the showroom. His eyes landed on me, and I saw the flicker of recognition in his expression. He hesitated for only a second before making his way over. "Good afternoon, sir," Daniel greeted me, his tone professional but laced with respect. "What brings you in today?" Carl's face twisted in confusion. He looked between Daniel and me, clearly not understanding why his boss was speaking to me like I was someone important. "Wait," Carl muttered. "You know him?" Daniel's gaze flicked to Carl before returning to me. "Of course, Mr. Carter is—" I held up a hand, stopping him. I just wanted to check out the new Phantom, I said smoothly. But Carl here doesn't think I qualify as a serious buyer. Daniel's expression darkened slightly. Is that so? Carl was starting to sweat. I was just following protocol, he stammered. I didn't mean... I smiled. No worries. Why don't we take a look at the Phantom now? Daniel nodded immediately. Absolutely. Right this way, sir. As I followed him, I could feel Carl's panicked eyes boring into my back. The realization was starting to sink in, but he still didn't know the full truth. Not yet. I walked alongside Daniel as he led me to the section of the showroom where the high-end models were displayed. The Phantom sat there in all its glory, sleek, black, with a striking red interior visible through the window. It was exactly what I had in mind. I took my time circling the car, running my hand along its polished surface. I could still feel Carl's eyes on me, his confusion and panic growing with every second. He was struggling to piece things together, but he was still far from realizing the full picture. Daniel, ever the professional, gestured toward the car with a slight smile. This particular model comes with a fully customized interior, a twin-turbocharged V12 engine, and the latest technology package. We also offer additional customization options if you'd like something even more unique. I nodded. Sounds good. I'd like to take a seat inside. Daniel immediately reached for the key fob in his pocket, but before he could unlock the car, Carl stormed over, looking flustered. Hold on! Hold on! He blurted out, stepping between us and the Phantom. Daniel, are you sure about this? Daniel frowned. Sure about what? Carl shifted uncomfortably. I mean, you know, we have policies about letting people just sit in the high-end models. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Policies? Since when do we stop potential buyers from seeing the cars they're interested in? Carl hesitated, realizing he had walked into a trap. Well, I just meant certain buyers. His voice trailed off when Daniel shot him a sharp look. I crossed my arms and decided to turn up the heat. Carl, you seemed pretty certain a few minutes ago that I wasn't a serious buyer. Why don't you tell Daniel exactly why you thought that? Carl swallowed hard. Look, I didn't mean... Daniel cut him off. Carl, step aside. His voice was firm. Carl looked between us, then reluctantly moved out of the way. Daniel pressed the fob, and the Phantom's doors unlocked with a quiet beep. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. The leather interior was pristine, the dashboard gleaming under the showroom lights. I let my fingers trail over the controls, feeling the power at my fingertips. Carl stood stiffly nearby, still grappling with whatever sinking realization was creeping up on him. After a moment, I turned to Daniel. I'll take it, I said casually. Carl's head snapped toward me. What? You heard me. I leaned back against the seat, making myself comfortable. I'll take it. Full price. No financing. Carl's face went pale. Daniel, on the other hand, simply nodded. Of course, sir. I'll have the paperwork drawn up immediately. Carl took a shaky step forward. You're really buying it. I smiled. You seem surprised, Carl, he stammered, trying to recover. No, I mean, that's great. Congratulations, sir. He forced a nervous chuckle. I could see the desperation in his eyes. He was starting to realize he had messed up, badly, but he still didn't know just how badly, not yet. Carl was visibly struggling to keep his composure. His whole demeanor had changed, his usual arrogance replaced with nervous politeness. But I wasn't done yet. Daniel left to prepare the paperwork, leaving me alone with Carl. He shifted awkwardly, forcing a strained smile. So, congratulations again, Carl said, his voice tight. The Phantom is a great choice, I smirked. Yeah? Thought it wasn't in my budget a few minutes ago. Carl's face twitched, but he quickly recovered. You know, I was just doing my job. You wouldn't believe how many people come in here just to look at these cars without any intention of buying. I leaned back against the Phantom. So that's what you assumed about me, that I was just here to waste your time. Carl let out a nervous chuckle. Of course not. I mean, misunderstandings happen, right? I held his gaze, letting the silence stretch between us. He shifted uncomfortably under the weight of it. Then, as if on cue, Daniel returned, holding a folder. All right, Mr. Carter, I have the purchase agreement here. Carl blinked. Wait, Carter? Daniel hesitated, realizing Carl still hadn't figured it out. His lips pressed together, but he remained silent, letting things play out. Carl turned back to me, the gears finally clicking into place in his mind. You're not just a customer, are you? I raised an eyebrow. You tell me. Carl looked to Daniel, then back to me. His hands fidgeted. You're someone important. I smiled. Very observant, Carl. Keep going. His breathing quickened. Are you, like, some celebrity? A famous athlete or something? I chuckled. Nope. Carl's nervousness deepened. Then who? Before he could finish, Daniel spoke up, his voice calm but firm. Mr. Carter owns this dealership, Carl. The words hit Carl like a sledgehammer. His mouth dropped open, but no words came out. He stared at me, his face draining of color. I crossed my arms. That's right, Carl. I own this place, and not just this dealership, all of them. Carl took a step back as if the truth physically pushed him. No way. I pulled out my phone and tapped a few buttons, bringing up the corporate website. I turned the screen toward him, where my name was proudly displayed as the CEO. Believe it now? Carl's jaw clenched. He looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. I watched him struggle for words, his mind no doubt replaying every dismissive comment, every condescending smirk, every single mistake he made the moment I walked in. And now, he knew he had just disrespected the one person he should have never underestimated. Carl stood frozen, his eyes darting between me and Daniel, as if hoping this was some kind of elaborate joke. But there was no denying it now. He had just spent the last half hour disrespecting the owner of the entire dealership chain. I had no idea, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I tilted my head. Does it matter? Carl swallowed hard. I mean, if I had known who you were, I never would have. I held up a hand, stopping him. That's the problem, Carl. It shouldn't take knowing who I am for you to treat me with basic respect. Every customer who walks in here, whether they're wearing a suit or jeans, deserves to be treated with dignity. Carl nodded frantically. I completely agree, sir. You're absolutely right. I could see the desperation in his eyes. He was scrambling to save himself, but it was far too late for that. Daniel cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, how would you like to proceed? Carl spun toward Daniel, his face pleading. Sir, please, Daniel, listen. This was all a misunderstanding. I swear. I'm not. Daniel remained stone-faced. Carl, I've had complaints about you before. Customers have mentioned feeling unwelcome, but we never had solid proof. His gaze flicked to me. Until now. Carl's breathing became ragged. Please, I cut in, my tone calm but firm. Carl, do you really think I want someone like you representing my business? His shoulders slumped, and he looked down, knowing there was no escape. I sighed. Effective immediately, you're fired. Carl's head snapped up. No, wait! Please, Mr. Carter, I need this job. I met his gaze without a shred of sympathy. And I needed to be treated with respect when I walked in here, but that didn't seem to matter to you, did it? Carl opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. He knew he had no defense. Daniel stepped forward. You can collect your belongings and leave now. Carl's face contorted with frustration, but he knew he had no choice. With his head hanging low, He turned and walked toward the back office to pack up. I exhaled, shaking my head. People like him are why we lose good customers. Daniel nodded. I'll make sure we find someone better for the position, someone who treats every customer with the respect they deserve. I smiled. That's what I like to hear. As I finalized the purchase of my Phantom, I couldn't help but feel satisfied. Carl had thought he had power over me, but in the end, he learned the hard way. Never judge a book by its cover. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notification to be the first to know when interesting and lesson-packed stories like this one drop.